Hi, I'm Nan Simonson, and I want to invite you on a garden tour. No, not that one. That's my garden. I just had the best afternoon. I went to a friend's house for lunch, and she had said to me, oh, for the last month or so, 2 months, maybe 3, in texts and in conversations. Oh, I'm working on the front garden. I'm working on building a shed. I'm working on putting things together. And I obviously didn't pay a lot of attention because I hadn't seen it until yesterday when we decided to have lunch together. And she said, oh, come on over. And I said, good, I'd love to see what you're doing. Well, I was blown away. That's why we're doing this video, because I'm going to show you what she's been up to, what it looks like to build your own garden shed, what it looks like to have a skill that she has, and to put something together that is part of a vision. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get something out of this. It has something to do with the why build a thing. It has something to do with, well, what do I build? And it also has something to do with the how. Enjoy this, and we'll show you some still pictures at the end that even include the night lighting. All right, I'll be back to you in a moment. Hi, everyone. I've just arrived at my friend Anja's house. Look at this. Anja, tell them about this gorgeous house. What do they call it, and how old is it?
It's a Queen Anne. It's a painted lady. Painted lady meaning it has one main color and 6 subcolors, I want to say. So it's from 1888. It's one of Riverside's oldest homes. And we bought it in 2007 and underwent a 6-year full restoration.
And I'm going to show you Anja's phenomenal outfit.
Oh, and listen, since we're going to be
she loves
talking
color
about my garden, I invited Nan over to check out my newest project. And on the way over, she said, let's film it for my people. People, get yourselves some Wellingtons, because they will keep you going through any garden project. Got it?
And I'm sure she actually wears them all the time.
I do.
Anja is, by the way, 6 feet tall. I'm 5'2", and her husband is 6'4" or 5". She is German, born in Germany. Her husband is British, born in England, and both have charming accents. And they have a couple of boys, both college age or having graduated, that are 6'3" and 6'6". So I call them being here with Anja. I'm here for lunch, but I'm kind of hijacking her to show you her project. Being here is like being in the land of giants. Okay, so Anja, tell me about this. I'm going to start out by saying, when she said to me, oh, I've had a project, and we text back and forth, and she texted and said, oh, I'm building a shed. And I thought, okay, I'm being able to get in the front yard. Well, okay. This isn't any old shed. So tell us about this, Anja.
So how it started out with, just like most people, I'm assuming, I wanted more storage space. I own a lot of tools. I'm a very handy girl. I build things, I design things, I create things out of nothing sometimes. So I wanted a shed. That's how it all started. This was all grass. We used to play here with the boys when they were younger. And so I came up with this plan of, if I angle the shed, and I copy elements out of the main house.
Like the colors?
The colors, some of the architectural features, obviously keep it minimal because it still is a shed. And I'll just incorporate it. It's very unusual to have a shed in your front yard, I understand that. But I knew I could make it work. I'm creative enough.
Now, I heard that neighbors came by as it evolved, and now that it is a full-fledged element in your home garden, people said, "Oh, your husband did a great job on this. Would you please clarify who built this thing?"
My husband had nothing to do with it at all. He was actually quite opposed at first. He was like, "Oh, it's not so sure we should do this." But as we give each other freedom to do things, and so he did. He trusted me, he trusted my journey, and he is utterly impressed with the finished result. He loves it. And
Well,
the neighborhood children actually want me to turn it into a playhouse. The
All
girls
right.
call it the baby house of the street.
So let's take a walk, and I'm going to give you my impression before I ask Anja additional questions. When she said that she had built this shed, again, I expected a shed. I am a garden designer. I had my own landscape design company for over 15 years, but I've been designing for 20 years. I created a botanic garden on 2¼ acres that was in Sunset Magazine and a number of other publications. And so I know design. When I got here, I was flabbergasted. I was simply blown away by what I'm going to use this strong term, the perfection of her design. You can see that it's not cookie cutter symmetrical. In other words, she had the same design elements that include the soft lines on the landscape borders, but she made them fit into the space. She made it much more interesting by having a wider arc and a narrower arc in this front. Tell us how this entire thing evolved, and then tell us how a person even begins to imagine a project like this, but more importantly, to build it. I know, and I'm going to say something that may not be true, but I believe it to be true, that you didn't write this out and design it. It evolved organically. Is that so?
It did indeed. So most of my projects evolve organically. I have somewhat of an idea of, all my projects have a purpose. So I don't just start building things for fun. There's always a practicality factor in it. So with the shed, as I said, I wanted extra storage, and I'm happy to show you the inside. It is very utilitarian. Don't be disappointed. Most people want a tea room. I have a tea room inside. I don't need it out here.
Well, may I ask a question? Because people are going to finish this having looked at your house on the outside, and I don't want to force anything on you, but would you be opposed to a tour on the inside?
If people would love to see it, I'd love to have you all come back and see the inside.
Okay, this is, and
wicked.
I asked that because this could be a real treat in that what you see here, that this creativity, and what I'm going to say also is perfection of orchestration. People that you hired to build things like this have usually had decades of training, and you look at all their little details and you say, oh, okay, they built this perfectly. Anja has built this perfectly. Well, she's had decades of training because she and her husband recreated the inside of this house to stay true to the, I'll call it the ethics of a Queen Anne style home. And so to see the inside, and we will do that eventually, will be a real treat. So take us through this process.
But to quickly get back to your question, Nan.
Yes.
So yes, it did evolve organically. The shed was my main thing, and off of there, I've always wanted a little bit of a vegetable garden. I like the idea of it. I'm a plant-based person. Now I'm growing my own food. It's my first attempt. I hope I'll succeed.
May I say something? I'm here for lunch. She's a plant-based person. How long have you been whole food plant-based? As I am.
2 decades.
Okay, so
Probably.
I'm going on 6 years.
Even as a child.
Okay,
So I
never
grew up
ate
pretty
meat.
meatless, which
Okay.
was a nightmare for my parents.
Yes.
Germans eat a lot of meat. But I used to refuse, and then, later in adulthood, I became fully plant-based.
Okay, so go ahead.
So every day I had a different idea, and every day a leftover material from some other project gave me yet another idea of this is how the raised garden beds, for instance, came along. Oh, I had this leftover wood, let me build some raised garden beds, and how do I then incorporate them into everything? I should lay some brick around it. You know, how do I then manage the leftover areas behind the shed? This is when the gravel came into play.
And may I ask you about this? Anja, I have considered to be rather delicate. And let me tell you why. Because she was stricken, I'll use that word because it's true, with Lyme disease. Anja, how long ago?
Well, according to doctors, probably, potentially even in my childhood. But I have suffered for about 10 years before being diagnosed.
Okay. And then after diagnosis, treatment and treatment and treatment. That's, we've known each other 15, 18 years, and that's what I remember. And those spirochetes in body parts, in organs and tissues, when they pop up, they could take you down. And she was taken down again and again. So I thought, oh, she's just very delicate. She's not delicate. Look
I am
at
very delicate.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. So who moved all of these planters and this pillar and the planter on top? Who did this? How did it come about? And I love that you have a gravel area. That's very European. The gravel areas make sense, and I have to warn people, you don't just throw rocks on soil. It will migrate down into the dirt. So
Yes.
talk about that.
So what I do is I actually use a pretty heavy plastic painter's sheet. You buy this in big rolls. I want to say it's about $100 sufficient for all of that.
You know what, Anja, I think that we lost you for just a second. I was trying to increase sound, and I think I stopped the video, and you're back on again. So you use a painter's
I don't use
roll.
landscape wheat cloth. I don't find that strong enough over the years. So I use it's a plastic. It comes in black, in white, in yellow. It's I think they call them painter's sheets. It comes in a big roll, and it's heavy duty plastic.
And so you just laid this directly over your grass?
Yes, I removed some of the grass simply to gain some depth, so I can fill it with gravel depending on what levels you work. If you have an area that needs excavating a little bit, it's worth the effort, because you need a good layer of gravel on top of whatever you decide to put underneath. But then gravel is such a fun material to work with. I purchased mine from Thompson Building Supplies. They have a variety of choices, variety of prices, and we chose this pretty much because of the name. It's called California Gold.
California Gold.
And I loved it.
And you said something to me at one point during this project. You said, oh, we had such a gift, surprise gift, because when we got the gravel and we laid it down, we then hosed it off.
Yes,
and
so it was all very dusty, and now that it's been hosed off and had a couple of rainfalls on it, it actually has these purple speckles in it. And
can you lift up the rock?
Charming.
In other words, there are
so
these
if you compare
wonderful
them by color,
yes,
and there's just a few of them in there.
And it actually adds depth to it rather than simply everything being a beige or a gold. All right, so you somehow got these here with what, dollies and things?
Yes, I use a big heavy duty furniture dolly, one of those with the big handle. I load them on, and then I tilt them, and then I move them.
Okay,
and
all right.
It takes me a few attempts to position them the way I like them, so it all makes sense. I continuously look from all angles of the of the property, when you enter, when you come out of the house, when you stand at the side, and it just has to be pleasing to me. So my husband and I, we keep moving stuff until we both go, this is it, we like it.
Okay, so landscape cloth, but it was a painter's cloth. Rock down, hose the rock off, move in the cement planters, the cement pillar, and what I'm guessing is an iron pot on top on which you have a bromeliad growing, correct?
You would be the expert on what is in there growing, and so I just take your word for it.
That's a bromeliad.
Okay.
Okay, so then you just found at some thrift shop this wonderful planter, right?
No, actually, I built this.
Of course you
I
did.
built it, and these were wood planks, and I cut them into small little strips. Used the subcolors of the house: the green, the yellow, the light blue, and the dark blue, and even the fuchsia, because the wood wasn't long enough, but I wanted this length of a planter, so I had
Okay.
to enter a little centerpiece to make it work.
And I'm going to pan
And-
back to the house and show you. You can see these colors that she's picked up.
And
That is quite an important
because
design
once
element.
again, I mean, a planter box this size will probably cost you about $300-400 at least, and I wasn't prepared to spend that money, because that's another thing I do. All my projects are done on a budget. I am a huge budget girl. I will open up a credit card if it saves me $20 in materials, and then I buy all my material in bulk. I've done that with this project. So I saved myself about $400 with the shed build.
And you didn't have to source everything new, because I heard you say at one point, and I'm going to take people to the front of it, that when I asked you if you created this stained glass yourself, you explained that you didn't. Tell us about that, because that's another thing I've come to realize. Because they renovated this house, and quite frankly have not stopped renovating it, they have a lot of materials, a lot of artistic details that they've collected in a lot of, in many, let's say, price-wise ways. Where did you get this, and how long ago? The panels.
How long ago? Good question. At least 10 years ago. I purchased them 10 years ago. They came in a set of 3s. There were these 2 and the one that you saw around the corner. They came out of another smaller Victorian downtown Riverside. The family had moved to Texas, and I purchased them. And these 2 were in the windows of the 3rd floor studio of the house. However, my son moved into that studio, and he found them slightly bothersome to open and close the windows, because they were really just hanging in the window. And so I took them out for his convenience, and then I was left with them standing in the house, not really having a place. And I thought, well, how fun would that be if I put some stained glass on my shed?
Marvelous. And are they decorative, or are they truly a window? In other words, do they let light into your shed?
You know, that is a good question. I decided to keep them decorative, because putting windows in, I've done that in the past, requires a lot of framing. Considering these don't let in a lot of light in the first place, and I don't need the light in the shed since it is utilitarian, I decided to just keep them decorative.
Okay.
And so that is a good question. Most people don't even notice.
And then you detailed this, and if I remember the evolution, because we've talked through texts, she put up the shed and then thought, oh, well, there has to be some kind of an entry point, and that was well before this brick was considered. So tell us about this entry point.
So once the shed was built, and the shed is sitting on these cinder foundation blocks.
Oh, really?
So it is elevated off the ground.
Okay.
Because, I wanted to keep moisture in mind, with the rains we're having, and I just didn't want to have it sitting on the ground. So I then had this, number one, it's a very small step, but it also kind of looked a little bit lost to come out of a shed or go into a shed from a grass area. So since I had turned this into this charming little feature, I decided to create like a little front porch area with these pillars that I've had. So I repurposed them. Then I built the little picket fences once again out of leftover wood that I cut into sizes. And I poured the cement area. It is a dry pour. I sunk in these ancient stones.
If you didn't hear what she said, we've got a helicopter over us. It's a dry pour, which means you pour down a powdered cement and then you hose it in. But you were saying you had these design elements like these decorative bricks and decided to incorporate them as well.
Yes.
And then you placed them, then you you poured the dry cement over everything, and then you watered it in?
Correct. So it's important with dry cement that you mist it at first. So because if you put a full stream of water in, you will wash the cement away.
Okay.
So you mist it and let the top layer slightly harden.
Okay.
And then once that has gained a little bit of a hard surface, you need to hose it down a lot, about 8 times I want to say, within 2-hour intervals. So and I did it before the real heat came, which was smart. I also put rebar in so the heat doesn't dry it up too fast and crack the cement.
Okay.
What you don't get by doing this is you don't get a super smooth, driveway type finish, but I didn't want that.
I like this.
I wanted it to stay rough, I wanted it to, so I don't slip on it.
Yeah.
It's slightly uneven, but this is exactly what I had in mind. I needed it to look like it had been here for 100 years.
So you have this shed, and you told me when you began it, and again, I didn't envision anything like this. I have a shed that I bought at Home Depot and threw up when my husband turned the garage into a music room. And that's what I was envisioning, and I bought it and never did another thing with it, of course. It looks fine, but she built this. So Anja, how did you even begin? What did you use? What material did you use? And then you'll have to show us what's inside. And this was, again, before it became this decorative marvel, because that's what you do, this was purely for the storage of your gardening materials, because the family has so many things that they have equipment for. They have so many interests that you didn't have any place for your tools anymore. So tell us about that.
Correct. So, all my power tools, my saws, my drills, my gardening stuff, a lawnmower, big item. I do my own maintenance on my property, so I have a big lawnmower. And it started with the foundation, of course, like most buildings do. And as I told you earlier, I raised it and I put 2x6s across, and I just built a floor off of that.
Okay.
And then, you create the wall space. I purposely chose an 8x8 size because most things in building supply stores come in 8 feet length. So these are it's called cheating for an outside, and they have almost like a plasticky layer. They're made of wood.
Okay. Before you open that, I'm going
Okay.
to zero in on something. All right. So Nick, her husband, wasn't crazy about this idea. And she won him over. And this has something to do with it. Would you explain that, please?
Yes, so my husband loved the idea of extra storage, of course, but then when I said I want to create a garden off of it and grow vegetables, he just realized how much work this was going to add to our already busy schedules. So he wasn't too keen on it. But his father, who sadly passed away, we miss him dearly, he was a tremendous gardener, and he grew all his own food. So I dedicated this garden to my father-in-law, John, and once I had somebody make this sign for me and I had hung it, my husband was fully in. He went and chose all the plants, all the food that we're growing now was all his choice.
And
He was
we'll
on
get
it.
to that. We'll get to that. All right. So this is da 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 da. Open it up. Oh my gosh.
To your disappointment, it is very utilitarian.
Well, what I let me get you so that you can see this without outside light interfering. Now, what's kind of fun about this is that a lot of us and a number of you will say, Nan, that's not true. When we look at these things, we say, oh, that's my husband's area. I would say that's not true, because all gardening things at my home are mine because I am the gardener. And Anja would say the same thing. And when she talks about tools, because I said, well, how did you saw that, Anja? How did you do that, Anja? And she said, oh, well, that was my table saw. And what other kinds of equipment did you use to build this?
So I have a big table saw in the back that is very useful. If you cut wood strips, if you got big planks, you need to have a big table saw. I do have a handheld circular saw as well, but getting straight lines and it's, kind of hit and miss. I have a chop saw, which is in there, and then in all the boxes in the back, you will see my sanders, my Dremels, my plumbing supplies. I do work on plumbing in the house. Yeah,
drywall. She has her drywall buckets.
Correct. There's a steamer up there. You know, if you ever remove wallpaper, you will need a steamer.
Of course. All right. So we have this marvelous structure that ticks all the boxes as it relates to useful space. Now, and this is what she's talking about. You saw the one side that was painted to match the house, and this is the other side of that material that she used to build it. All right, what else, Anja?
And we'll close this.
Should we talk about the vegetable boxes and what you chose to put in them?
We can, absolutely. So I created 3 because that's how much leftover material I had. I really worked with what I had, and so I decided to have 2 matching ones and a larger one. There's really no plan to it, that's just how it happened. And in here, Nick wanted watermelon. Watermelon naturally grows flat on the ground. It will take over, it will be very, very big. I didn't want that, so I will train all my plants to grow vertically, which is space saving.
Now I'm going to say something about that as a landscape designer, as a gardener, I would say, but Anja, you don't grow watermelons up a trellis. This is a ground growing heavy basketball size, soccer ball size. I don't know which is bigger thing, but she had an answer for that. And of course I knew she did. And your answer was what?
Correct, and it is not my answer. Someone else came up with this because I didn't invent vertical gardening.
Yeah.
You buy watermelon hammocks, and as they grow to a particular size, you hang them in a little hammock, and then you support them by whatever structure you have built. And we already have the first little baby watermelon. Check this out! Isn't that adorable?
Now, can you imagine? And I'll take a photo. I'm not sure how I'll attach it to this video. I may not be able to, but can you imagine what this is going to look like with these watermelons supported by netting or whatever the watermelon hammock is made out of, with watermelons just decorating it like a Christmas tree? This is so exciting.
Yes.
All right, and then we'll move to your other gardening area, and another one of the vertical growing screens that you simply threw together and made. And what is this?
Once again, same concept, same idea. Zucchini and cucumbers.
Yep.
All choices of Nick.
Lovely.
And
So he wasn't behind it, but then you went to the garden center and he said, this is what I want, this, and this, correct?
yes, I suddenly had no say in it no more because now it was his garden.
Fair
I'm
enough.
very happy with that.
Yeah, fair enough. And then, this is so fun. Recently, Anja and I talked about, because Anja has a lot of bailiwicks, and vegetable gardening was not a bailiwick, so she texted me with questions about it and asked, what do I do to support my tomatoes? And if you've seen some of my videos, you'll see that I have I don't grow much in the ground. I don't have wide sunny areas that I grow in pots or raised beds, but mainly pots. And I told her about this with, I guess, Anja, what did they call this?
Now I purchased the cement wire mesh. People will lay this down in any cement areas that they pour to protect the cement from cracking. You can also buy cow grit, I think it's called.
Is that what I
at a
have?
feed store.
Oh, yeah,
And
mine was.
It's very similar.
Yes.
And Nan's biggest, for me, important factor was to have something that is big enough that you can continue to get your hands through.
Yes.
Because you can buy all types of fence wiring and chicken wires, but the spaces are too small to continue working on your plants, particularly harvesting later on.
These are 5 or 6 inch openings. So, and she has 3 tomatoes in each one. That is perfect. That's great. And then she has bell peppers. So I'm, again, so taken by I'll repeat myself, the creativity, the beauty, the utility. And I love this word, and I'm not using it loosely, by the perfection. Because look at this brickwork. I called her delicate person, and then after I heard she did this, and after I saw it at one point, I then said, "You're a brick house." And I did that Commodore music thing to her. You're a brick house. Because she's like this Viking warrior lady that can do just about anything. And I believe this has a bit of a story, and plants could, and in many cases should, have stories. So tell us about this little trellis that you created for this special plant. What's the story?
The jasmine was given to me by a friend about 2 years ago. I had kept it in a pot because I didn't have a dedicated space for it, and I loved it. It actually smells deliciously when it blooms.
Okay.
And so I figured, because years ago, if you zoom behind you, I built a trellis and I grew star jasmine on it, and it's one of my favorite features in the garden. I've decided to build another trellis here, and hopefully this jasmine will do the same for me and just build a nice big green wall for me.
Yeah.
With plenty of flower. It feeds the bees, the birds, it's just such an attraction, and the smell is intense.
Yeah. This is not a star jasmine. It's a different jasmine. I don't remember the name of it, but this is a more classic jasmine, and it's fabulously fragrant. This is so much fun. And plumeria, the Hawaiian classic lei flower, in a pot in a nice shady sitting area, shaded by or from the sun when the sun's at a certain angle. And that's what I'm seeing a lot around here. And then in the back, in a practical area, this is so practical, you've created your workbench. You've got to have a workbench. Let me zoom in, and I see that you have a marble slab. How lucky that you can work with wet things and not worry about it affecting the bench.
Yes, and this is actually a leftover piece from our kitchen island.
Of course it is.
We size ourselves, and this is what we were left with, and it ended up in the garden.
And show them that, I'll call it a trash can. It's more than that. I have the same thing. And if you can get one of these.
Catchy can.
Oh,
what a good name.
All right. And if you can order one maybe on Amazon, or if you can buy one from your landscape center, look at this. Show what it does that makes it so practical when somebody is cleaning up in the garden.
Number one, it has two handles. So for most of us who, if this gets heavy, you can carry it easily. This handle sticks out.
And you can dump. When you dump.
It over for dumping purposes, this is easy. But my favorite feature is, particularly when I trim my roses or I do work in the garden, that just creates heaps of, cuttings. I put this on the ground and I take my broom and I brush everything straight into it.
Yeah.
It saves me bending down, it saves me trying to pick things up, and then you simply lift it up and you dump it into your green.
Throw it over your shoulder. I love that look. There she is, Amazon Viking lady. All right, we're gonna look at another area of the garden, a couple of areas, and then we'll be finished. And they were, as with everything she does, created with the atmosphere in mind. What will grow in particular areas. We've got other begonias, not begonias, we have other bromeliads here, and an old sculpture, very European.
We actually created this wall years ago. Once again, we matched elements out of the house. This was open, but we have a spa behind it, so we wanted to create a secluded area from, the view of people, and it separates areas in the garden.
Now, can you hear this, everyone? In my garden, I have a front fountain that bubbles more than flows, that the birds depend on. And in my back garden, I have a flowing fountain. If you can, get yourself a fountain, because this sound is, okay, it's scientifically proven to affect your parasympathetic nervous system. It actually helps you calm down and helps you, what they call rest and digest, and alleviate tension and stress. Sit here, see what I mean? She created shade with this, but I'm going to back up and I'll show you. Here is the hot tub, and she created further shade with a wind sail. And that wind sail picks up where the, you can see that here, where the umbrella left off. And so this area that we are standing in right now would be in searing sun right now. It's oh my gosh, it's almost 12 o'clock and I have to get my husband to an appointment. So we're going to rush this. But my point is, we would be in searing sun right now, and she's got this gorgeous Japanese maple that she could grow here, and she said it was a little stick when she put it in. And everything she's growing requires this kind of protection. So we are going to, actually I have to, okay, we're gonna really rush.
Yes.
Because I promised him I'd be home by 12, or actually before 12. And okay, this was another one of those Anja moments. You know what? We have a back area. Oh, I'm not gonna say it. You use your words. Tell them about the evolution of this in a condensed form. Go ahead.
Okay, so the most condensed version of all of this is these pillars were handed in our trusting hands by the old Riverside Foundation many years ago. They came out of a Victorian home that was torn down in Redlands. We promised them we would do something with it. That's how this started.
And by the way, that's how closely we hold and covet these old homes in our area because of the history of Riverside in the 1800s, late 1800s, being the #1 per capita city in the nation because of our citrus production. And so we had some real moneyed families in here and these marvelous Victorian homes. So go ahead and look at this, people. We came to dinner one night and dined here with the lights on. I'm going to get a couple of photos from her with the lights on. Look at this marvelous area. And this could have been nothing more than another empty corner in a home. Do you want to have anything more to say about this? This decorative ball is something that Riverside had a project, and different organizations had representative balls representing their...
Actually oranges.
They're oranges.
Yes.
They're not balls. Thank you. And each organization represented their either cause or their purpose with a decorative art. And then you could buy these after this promotional period that I believe was about a year. And of course, Nick and Anja bought one. Okay, Anja,
So this area,
yes.
really, what you see is what you get. And what I tell people is don't be afraid to bring indoor elements like pictures, lamps that you would put in a living room, pillows, bring it to the outside. It really adds a lot of charm and turns it into a proper outdoor living space.
And
everyone who comes here says, I would never hang pictures outside. Buy some cheap ones at a yard sale, hang them outside.
And I'll show you the back end of this beautiful home. And we're going to cut it off now. And we'll be back, and we'll be back indoors. Anja, do you want to say something to tie this all up? Last final words. Go ahead and step in front of us if you would.
Some final words. So I would say if you did like what you saw outside, wait until you see the inside.
And she is offering this to us as a gift. There's no You know, she's not trying to sell anything. She doesn't design for people. She doesn't, this is 100%, I'll say, an effort to encourage people to use their creativity, use some muscle, or hire someone with muscle to live in beautiful spaces, because these spaces can soothe your soul. Well, that's it. Anja, you're a sweetheart. I adore you.
Don't
Thank you
forget
very
the
much.
boots.
Don't forget the boots. I love you.
Thank you, Nan. Thank you. I love you too.
Bye-bye.